Hello and welcome to our lecture for Monday, April the 27th, um, on finishing up the autonomic nervous system, and then we'll start in on senses today. And I was just checking, I didn't get to check both classes to see if you guys had finished your test from Saturday. It looks like most of you did, some of you didn't, some of you are in trouble. I shouldn't say trouble, but if you did not complete it, then you need to talk to me ASAP. And don't forget that you have your lab practical that's due tomorrow by 11:59 p.m. And so we're going to, oh, and then speaking of tomorrow, I am going to meet at 1 o'clock tomorrow to do some more lecture stuff. So we'll just meet for an hour so that we can keep going through senses, get senses done for Wednesday and Friday, because your autonomic nervous system and senses test will be due on Monday. And then, so we'll meet Monday, Wednesday, and then Thursday will be your, you need to take your final. So I'm still debating on how we're going to do that. But I will let you know in plenty of time on what our plans are for completion of the final. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up the autonomic nervous system. And okay, so please be sure and go back through the actions of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems on all of these various parts of the body. Oops, not that. So this chart, which is this chart, and then this chart, which is this chart. So okay, so what does it really mean to be autonomic? It means that we're going to do things without the cerebrum. I still need to put the Decerebrate frog video up, but maybe I'll make that today or tomorrow. Anyway, so just remember, we will meet tomorrow. I'll put an announcement in, but we are going to meet tomorrow at 1 o'clock. All right, so all of from the hypothalamus on down will be part of autonomic nervous system function, with the hypothalamus, of course, being the one that's in control. We said that with the last test, that it's the heart of the autonomic nervous system. So if we look at various controls that go on, if we go down to the very, very basic level, the level of the spinal cord, we can see what reflexes are the spinal cord going to take care of. So urination, defecation, erection, and ejaculation reflexes will all come from the sacral region of the spinal cord, because this is all going to be parasympathetic except for ejaculation, and that will come from the very last of the lumbar nerves, but it's still going to come from the spinal cord. All right, then what other kinds of automatic involuntary things need to be regulated? Well, that's going to be the rest of like vascular smooth muscle and smooth muscle in the digestive tract and everything. So that's going to come from the reticular formation of the brainstem, which will be medulla oblongata, pons, and the spinal cord associated with them up at the top. So regulation of eye pupil size, respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing, that's going to come from the brainstem. And then the hypothalamus for homeostasis and integrating all of the sensory input that's going to come in and then send the motor output that way. What else can have an effect on our seemingly autonomic structures? Limbic lobe, so our limbic system, our emotional input. So when we're angry or we're scared or we're happy, excited, all of that stuff can come down through the reticular formation. So you can see that it's going to send its output down through the reticular formation to make your heart beat faster, to make your heart beat harder with sympathetic stimulation. So some limbic emotional kinds of stimuli will act on the hypothalamus, which can then act on the reticular formation. And then even some cerebral cortex. I mean, we need to learn what is dangerous and what's not. We need to learn, not everything is going to make people excited about you know, the same thing. I love cadavers. I mean, I just get excited in the thought of putting a skeleton back together. Oh my goodness, that's really exciting. That's coming from my cerebral cortex and then affecting, you know, the rest of my body. That's not going to be the same for every person, just everybody in my family. So again, my daughter that watches Grey's Anatomy, she mentioned, I was massaging her neck. She had a really bad headache, and I was massaging the back of her neck to help loosen up those muscles to make the headache go away. And she goes, you know, sometimes they massage the neck to lower your heart rate. And I'm all, oh yeah, carotid massage. She goes, yeah, they were doing that on Grey's Anatomy. And I'm just like, oh, daughter of mine. So anyway, at least she's getting her information from somewhere, and it's not too awfully wrong. So yeah, everybody in my family's weird. All right, now, brainwave activity. So you're probably heard, you know, what is the definition of death? Is when we have a cessation of brainwave activity. It's not just that your heart's not beating and you're not breathing anymore, because we can do that artificially for you. And you know, we do put you on a ventilator, like those individuals who have had serious reactions to the coronavirus and need to be on a ventilator. Their brains are still very much alive. We're just trying to, because of, you know, whatever in their lungs, that they are not able to breathe like they should to keep their brains going. And so by being put on a ventilator, then we give them the oxygen that their brains so desperately need, because of their own personal complications due to COVID-19. Not that the virus is going to cause that in you. We've seen time and time again, individuals having a variety of symptoms, from asymptomatic infection to obviously fatality, but due to an overreactive nervous system, an overreactive immune system. And it's not going to trigger that in everyone. There's got to be some component, some genetic component to those individuals who are having such a severe reaction to an infection with the virus. Okay, anyway, back to the lesson at hand. So what is brainwave activity? Then it just records the electrical activity of the neurons, so you know that nerve impulses are electrical impulses, and so the neurons firing are going to produce some electricity, and we are able to measure that electricity. Now, we don't necessarily, we can't diagnose so much with that. We can't pinpoint certain kinds of things with an EEG. It does give us some good information, but it's not as precise as like having an MRI or a CT or other kind of scan, a PET scan. So anyway, and I'll talk more about things about EEGs as we go along. So EEG stands for electroencephalogram or electroencephalography. So the measuring of electrical activity in the brain. All right. So here is what we do to test you for, or to collect the electrical activity in an EEG. So there's 22 electrodes that we put on your head in various positions, and they are, you know, it looks like it's random, but it's not. It's actually quite precise where they put these connections so that they can collect the information. And what do we collect are 4 types of brainwave patterns, and that's all. And so we'll go through each one of these brainwave patterns. And I'll come back to these pictures so that you can see as I go into the description. All right, this picture makes me sad. So sad. This was my daughter. This is my daughter, but this was my daughter 10 years ago. Almost like right now, exactly 10 years ago. So my daughter had epilepsy, or seizure disorder, and she was diagnosed at 3 when she had her first seizure. And then she continued to have seizures for about the next 7 years, on and off. We had great success medicating her, With the first medication that we tried, though, she did, after a period of time, become accustomed to it. We think because maybe because she grew and she needed a higher dosage. So she did have some breakthrough seizures during her medication time, and so whenever she'd have a breakthrough seizure, then that always reset the clock as to when she could get off her meds. A lot of times when kids are diagnosed very early, and especially with the types of seizures that she would have, where it was mostly just that 100-yard stare, the lights are on but nobody's home, they often grow out of them. And so she had, I think she had 3 EEGs, and this was the last one that she had. Because I think she had a breakthrough one a couple of times when we would go up and visit friends in Eager. She would have seizures up there. So there might have been an elevation trigger or something like that. We're not really sure. But anyway, so she's having, so we're getting ready to do an EEG. You can see she got a little tear in the corner of her eye because she wasn't really happy. So she's 6 in this picture. And so one of the things that when we're doing an EEG to test for epilepsy is that we want to induce a seizure while they're being hooked up, while they're being monitored. And so first of all, they make you sleep deprived. So she went to bed. I had to get her up at midnight and then keep her up. Now, usually the EEG tech, she says, I always tell the schedulers to schedule little kids early in the morning so they don't have to be up all day. So we had been up from midnight till 2:30 in the afternoon. And so both she and I were super, super tired. And then what they do is the tech says, okay, so let her go to sleep, start to drift off, and then a few minutes later, she go, okay, wake her up again and let her drift off and wake her up again so that they could measure the transition between the different brain waves and if they're, if they actually did trigger a seizure. Amy always had her seizures right when she woke up in the morning, or then later on, they started to come also when she went to bed at night, within the first hour or so that she went to bed. But usually they'd happen like at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we could tell she had a seizure cough. And so she would cough a certain way, and we just ran into the bedroom to know that she was having a seizure. And because it did something to her pharynx so that she couldn't breathe very well. And another thing that they do is they put a strobe light on them. And so I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But my daughter to this day does not like strobe lights. She's like, At first, when she was little, she'd say, I don't want to trigger a seizure. And then later on, she's like, no, Mom, I just can't do strobe lights. So so they do that to you also while they're testing you. So anyway, in the process, well, okay. So there's that. Then when we get to epilepsy, then we'll finish off the story. All right, so what are the 4 kinds of brainwaves? So let's go back and look at them. They are designated alpha, beta, delta, or alpha, beta, theta, and delta waves. The alpha waves, you can see the amplitude or the height of the wave is not that high. It's kind of more stretched out. So this is your brainwave activity when your brain's in idle. Like when you woke up in the morning and you're just kind of laying in bed, not really doing anything yet for the day, like you hit the snooze alarm, whatever. So those are alpha waves. Beta waves are what you have right now. You're concentrating on things, you're listening, you're thinking about stuff. And so then you would be exerting beta waves. Theta waves are what little kids produce. So little children, kid, will do this till, closer to puberty, when they start to take on a more adult, more beta wave-like pattern. If you are an adult and you have theta wave patterns, then we know that there's some brain damage. There's some cortex issues if you have theta waves and you are an adult. And then the last one are the delta waves. These are what you produce while you're asleep. And so you can see, high amplitude, really spread out because you're you know, you're asleep. The funny thing though, when you're dreaming, you make delta waves while you're asleep. Oh, why? Because your brain is creating a story. It's dumping out all that short-term memory that you don't need, and I don't know, putting information together in weird ways. You know what your dreams have been like. Okay, you should never be awake and have delta wave patterns. If you are brain damaged. Okay, so alpha, low amplitude, slow, synchronous, brain is an idle, calm, relaxed state of wakefulness. Beta, rhythmic, more irregular than alpha, higher frequency, awake and mentally alert, like you should be doing right now. Theta waves, common in children, abnormal and present, if present in adults who are awake, and then delta waves, high amplitude, low frequency, so they're really spread out. Deep sleep, the reticular activation center is anesthetized. So what that means is no input. We get, well, not no, but we get very little sensory input coming in because that's just been shut down. The reticular formation has just been shut down. And then indicates brain damage in awake adults. All right, sleep. Oh, I got to tell you, sleep is the coolest thing. I love to sleep, and I don't like it when my sleep is affected. But that's not where it ends. There's so much more to sleep. So I'm going to take you to, I mean, we can look at these different things. We'll come back to them, but I'm going to take you to this graph because this is my favorite. I love looking at this graph. And you know what? If you have a Fitbit, that your Fitbit will do this too. So I don't know how many of you, let me look on my Fitbit. Okay. Where's my Fitbit? And my sleep. And my sleep, not my heart rate. Where's my sleep? Sleep. All right. Okay, so we'll just take mine. This was mine last night. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, somebody's got a question. Hang on. All of it. So Camilla just asked, for those of you that are watching this in a recording, when people are pronounced brain dead, what part of their brain is not functioning? None of it is functioning. There's no electrical. There's a cessation of electrical brain activity. And that is the legal definition of death. We can't do anything about that. We cannot bring a person back from being brain dead. So there's nothing. It would be like flatlining in an ECG, but it would be a flatline EEG. No electrical activity at all. But yeah, and here's the thing, friends, is that when you have a cessation of brainwave activity, we can still keep your heart and your lungs going for a long time, hooked up to a ventilator. In fact, we have these boxes now that we use for heart transplants that as soon as we take, like, here's what we used to do with heart transplants. Person would die, and we would remove their heart, put it in an ice chest, and then fly it to the person that was going to receive it. And then they'd have to warm it up and infuse it with blood and everything, and then put it back. So there were at least a couple of hours that heart was not doing heart things after the person had passed away. But what we do now is we take the heart, we put it into a box, electrical box that's got blood and everything. They constantly infuse the muscle, or perfuse the muscle with blood. They keep it at body temperature. They keep it pumping. They keep the electrical activity going to the heart muscle so that it can continue to beat. And then put it into the recipient, and we have a lot more success keeping that heart alive. But that's what we're doing. If we can keep hearts good for a long time now, even without any brainwave activity in the body, just because of our technology that we have. So that's why we had to have a new definition of death, and not when the heart stopped, because we can start a heart again, and we can defibrillate a heart, and we can do lots of things to the heart. We just can't do anything to the brain. Once the brain is done, then the brain is done. anyway, so that's the answer to that question. What was I going to show you? Oh, my Fitbit. Okay, so this was me last night. Hey, so you can see there are stages. I know that's kind of blurry, but anyway, so you can, oh, that's not too bad. Usually I'm awake a lot more in the night. And so here's when I went to sleep. No, here's when I went to sleep. And then I went boom into deep sleep. And then I came up to a light sleep. And then I woke up. Oh, I think that's when somebody was in the kitchen at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then this is actually pretty good for me. And then I went back down into some deep sleep. And then I went like normal, moderate sleep, and then light sleep, and then I woke up. That was my snooze alarm, and then I got up. Okay, so that's actually pretty cool. It doesn't have all of the stages. You need to be in deep sleep. How much deep sleep did I get? Oh, REM sleep. Yeah, we wanted to talk about that REM sleep. 59 minutes. That's pretty good for me. Let's see if I have more days of, well, anyway, I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to waste your time. But if you have a Fitbit, now would be a really good time to analyze your sleep compared to this and what we're going to look at now and go, oh, you know, I've got good sleep, I have bad sleep, whatever. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I got a Fitbit, because I was having not good sleeping experiences, and I'm like, I need to track, because one of my friends was showing me about her sleep, and I'm like, oh, I need to do that. I need to analyze that. Okay, so here is your graph, or here's your table showing you the different stages and different brainwave activity that's happening at those different sleep stages. So here is awake. So red is awake. Here is that beta wave pattern that indicates that you're awake. So here you went to sleep. So this is when you went to bed. Hey, you woke up twice in the night. You probably didn't even know that you were awake, but you were enough awake that your heart rate and everything and your brainwave activity would have produced this kind of graph. So to produce the awake graph, wave patterns, beta wave patterns. Okay, then REM sleep. So what is REM sleep? Rapid eye movement. Oh, Siri's writing down everything I said. So rapid eye movement sleep, this is when we're dreaming. This is when we're processing the day's information. When our brain goes through, you know, basically it dumps your RAM and just is keeping, you know, your browsing history, that kind of stuff. We don't need to keep that. Get rid of that. Any phone numbers you might have memorized in the day, just temporarily, that's all dumped out of there. And so if we take a look at, we see that the EEG is similar to stage 1 or even similar to awake, because we basically are. But then how are we awake but not awake? Our brain is acting as if it's awake, but no sensory input's getting in because we've anesthetized the reticular activating system. And so we're not, well, I guess we're not, that's in deep sleep. That we're allowing that, but yet we're just not, sensory input's just not coming in. So notice that it says vital signs increase. So this is our heart rate and our breathing rate. You've probably noticed this if you have a dog and you know that it's dreaming because its feet are twitching and it's kind of woofing or whining or something. We always said that my dog was chasing rabbits in her dream. But anyway, so obviously dogs dream too. So so our vital signs increase. Skeletal muscles are inhibited, actively inhibited, you guys, except for our ocular muscles and our diaphragm. So our breathing rate is going to be affected. We can tell when someone's breathing, when someone's dreaming by the way they're breathing. And their eyeballs are moving around under their eyelids. That's why we call it rapid eye movement, okay? Why do we inhibit the skeletal muscles? So we don't hurt ourselves. Now, here's the funny thing is that when we're in stage 4 sleep, just before we go into REM, our muscles are not active, are not inhibited. And that's when we get up and walk around and sleepwalk, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. Okay, so now we're going to go from awake to stage 1. Eyes are closed, relaxation begins, a drifting sensation occurs. All right, how many of you have had that drifting sensation and then you just like jolted yourself awake because you thought you were falling? All right, so how come that happens? And it always happens just, you know, right when you go to sleep. It's because you're becoming relaxed and your muscle spindles are sending signals to your brain as if your muscles are falling, because everything's being relaxed, so your tone is decreasing. So your muscle spindles are like, whoa, wait a minute, you're falling. And so then you catch yourself. So it's a reflexive kind of thing. Vital signs are normal. EEG shows alpha waves. Arousal is easy. Okay, like me when I woke up there with my snooze alarm and then I went back to sleep and then I woke up again. Okay. Stage 2, EEG, more irregular sleep spindles start to appear. So these are short, high amplitude bursts. Arousal is more difficult. Then we get to, so here we are, awake, stage 1, stage 2. They weren't in stage 3 very long in this person. Then they went to stage 4. So 3, sleep deepens, theta and delta waves appear, vital signs decline, reached about 20 minutes after the onset of stage 1. And then look at while they were in stage 4. So here's what happens in stage 4. And look how big stage 4 is too. It's biggest, and this is what I find with me and my kids, because how do I know with my kids? I'll tell you in a minute. It happens right, our deepest sleep right when we go to bed, when we go to sleep. We don't tend to get as much deep sleep, it looks like. And I rarely get any more deep sleep after this. My deepest sleep is right here when I first go to sleep. And oh my gosh, I know that for sure. Whoops. Okay, so down here, slow wave sleep. EEGs dominated by delta waves, vital signs at their lowest normal level. Arousal difficult. So that's why we wet the bed, because our brain is so inhibited that we're not aware of that sensation that we need to go to the bathroom, and sometimes we just go. But we can have night terrors, and I'll talk about those in a second, and sleepwalking. So I was a sleepwalker as a child, and I would get up and walk around the house and go in the living room. My brother's 10 years older than me, so he'd be in watching TV. And he said one time I came in the living room and I stood in front of our dad's armchair. You know how dad has a dad chair. So our dad had a chair, and I stood in front of that, and then I started to pull down my underwear. And my brother's like, oh my gosh, she thinks she's in the bathroom. And so he just leaps up off the couch and grabs me, runs down the hall, puts me on the toilet so I didn't go to the bathroom. I had no clue. I just heard about it the next morning. But I guess he was pretty traumatized by, oh my gosh, he's gonna pee in our dad's chair. I've answered the phone asleep before and then awakened as I was on the phone and didn't know who I was talking to or what I was doing. I've sleep texted before. And my kids, so this is a bad thing, is my kids would come home and they'd come in and they'd talk to me, and I'd say, and whatever. And then they would tell me later, they'd say, well, Mom, I talked to you. You even talked back to me, you know, so I sleep talk apparently as well. And so fortunately my children never took advantage of it, because I could have told them anything. You know, if they could have said, Mom, will you buy me AirPods, or can I order the AirPods? And I would have said, sure, whatever, and not even known. And then they would have ordered them, and then they'd have come and I'd gone, what the freak? Where'd you get the money for that? Well, I just charged it your Amazon account, Mom. So fortunately, my children never ever took advantage of me in those situations. I think they're big enough now that they're not going to, but anyway, well, I guess I'll have to see about that. So now let me talk to you about night terrors. So, okay, so I'm a sleepwalker. So my oldest child, my son, had the absolute worst night terrors, you guys. And these are just not nightmares. These are just screaming, get up, eyes open, terrified, not knowing what's going on. They started when he was 9 months old, and then he had them until he was 13. And a lot of them would happen if he was having stress in his life. I found that connection at one point. But I don't know, not always. Sometimes I don't know why he would have his night terrors. Anyway, so he would get up and he would come in, stand next to the side of my bed, but I just knew, and he would be talking incoherently and just really distressed and disturbed. So I get him back to bed, but then I would wake him up. because if I didn't wake him up, and no, they're not going to die if you wake him up, because I know some people have heard that, whoa, don't wake them up because then their heart's going to stop or something. No. So I had to wake him up because I could never get him out. You know, he would have been in it who knows how long. So I would wake him up, and then he would fall right back to sleep, and he would have no memory of it ever happening the next morning. And oh, sometimes it was really bad. One time he went over and stood next to his sister's bed and said, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," because he was a brat to her at the time, and so I guess his conscience was bothering him or something. So he had night terrors, and then his sister's little sister, so my Amy, had epilepsy, and her seizures would happen as she would fall asleep or wake up in the morning. So weird stuff in my family with sleep. So okay, I think there was something else I was going to tell you, but I don't know. So let's just go back to our graph. And so here we can see deep sleep, and we wake up and we go back in, and we don't even come all the way out of the stages. We just can go up and down through the stages, and that's going to happen all night long. Oh, and by the way, you dream about 3 or 4 times a night. So if you don't remember your dreams, it's usually because you didn't dream right before you woke up. These dreams we tend not to remember, apparently. So anyway, sleep is so cool. Okay, so there's that 4 stages of non-REM sleep and then REM sleep. So we're going to look at REM. First occurs 90 minutes into sleep. EEG patterns become more awake, alpha-like. REM has begun. Body temperature, heart rate, respiration, blood pressure all increase. Oxygen use by the brain is greatest through the whole night. Eyes move, but other skeletal muscles inhibited. Most dreaming, okay, but not all, but most dreaming occurs during REM, but nightmares and night terrors occur in stage 3 or 4 of sleep. Okay, so there's that. All right, so we've talked about consciousness before, how being conscious is because we're relaying information up through the thalamus and onto the cerebral cortex. And how do we detect levels of consciousness has to do with our voluntary response to a command. So voluntary muscle contraction in response to a command. That is what determines how conscious we are. So if we, somebody says, squeeze my fingers or whatever, yeah, then we can do that. And I told you when we were looking at the subdural hematoma that there's a Glasgow coma scale from 0 to 14, and there's 4 different areas in that, and like eye move, well, let's see, what is it? I know one is skeletal muscle, and then something with eye movement, and I don't know, I can't remember. I have to look those up. But so we just evaluate with those characteristics in those 4 categories, and then we put a scale together to let you know just how conscious or unconscious you happen to be. But consciousness then is the conscious perception of sensations, and then voluntary initiation, control of movement. And it has to be voluntary. You have to give them a command, and they have to execute that command. But what if you're paralyzed? They have to figure out something that, you can have conscious control over to indicate, yeah, you're not unconscious. 4 different stages: alertness, drowsiness or lethargy, stupor, and coma. Sleep is not part of your consciousness. Sleep is a different kind of thing because you still have information coming in. It's a whole other thing. Now, being conscious involves simultaneous activity of large areas of your cortex. There's not just one spot that says, okay, I'm conscious if this part works, or I'm unconscious if it doesn't. It's the thalamus taking that sensory input through your whole areas of your brain. Superimposed on other types of neural activity. Yeah, it is, because you can still be alive and be in a coma. So we know that autonomic function is happening. Your heart's beating, your blood pressure is being regulated, your breathing, your diaphragm is contracting, all those kinds of things. And then you're conscious on top of that. And then we have reflexive activity with our spinal cord, all of that, and then consciousness on top of that. It's holistic and totally interconnected. So there is not just one set pattern for consciousness again. And a really good example of that is that a memory recalls several roots. And so you may have a particular trigger for a memory, but yet it brings in a lot of other things. Like if I smell coffee brewing, it reminds me of going to my aunt's house in the summertime, and I can remember not just the smell of the coffee, but what her house smelled like and it looked like and what it felt like, and things that we used to do and play out back and all that kind of stuff. And because it all comes in together. And that's why, you guys, when I help you to learn things, that I try to bring in other things to relate to what you already know, so that you can put those things together. You can't just learn a list of facts and make them stay and make them be meaningful to you. You need to connect them with something else. And so that's why I tell so many stories, to try to get you to relate experientially and whatever, with stuff that you already have, to put in and keep that information that you have. So that's why we give you mnemonic devices and other techniques and tools and tricks to try to remember things. Okay, and then fainting and syncope is when you don't have enough cerebral blood flow to your brain. Obviously, cerebral blood flow can be because you just have low blood pressure, hemorrhage, stress, or you may be doing something stupid, or you may see something that's scary, and it's like those fainting goats. I just have so much sympathetic stimulation that I just need to stop doing what I'm doing so that it doesn't bother me anymore. Like if you blood or needles or whatever, you know, watching somebody have a baby, whatever things cause people to faint. But typically fainting, like if you're in marching band and you lock your knees out there on the field and then you pass out because it's hot or whatever, is you're not getting blood flow to your brain. So your brain says to the conscious part, so the unconscious part of your brain says to the conscious part of your brain, you're being stupid, stop locking your knees, but you don't do it. And so they said, okay, we're not getting enough brain, so I'm going to make you horizontal. So anytime that you faint, it's your body's effort to get it horizontal so that the blood flows to the brain more successfully than if you were upright. Okay, so it's all about blood flow. All about blood flow. Okay, now epilepsy is just a big firing. It's like a short circuiting in your brain. A torrent of electrical discharges of groups of neurons. What are the causes of epilepsy? They can be genetic, they can be trauma, head injury. That was when we brought Amy in for the first time. Like, we were really good friends with our doctor back then. He's since moved away, but he, in fact, my husband was doing some drywall work for him. So the first time she had her seizure, she had coughed, she made a noise. And so I told him, like I said, she was 3, and I said, well, go get Amy and come and put her in bed with me, and because he's getting ready to go over to our doctor's house. So he picked her up and he set her in bed, and she was kind of like on her knees and kind of like on her elbows and kind of looking up at the ceiling. And I said, all right, Amy, lay down. You need to go to sleep. And nothing, no response. She was just still stiff like that. And I said, I can't get her to, lay down and everything. And I said, there's something wrong with her. And I said, call the doctor. And so he just called him right away. And he said, just take her to the ER. Don't even mess with me. Just take her right to the ER. And so we did. And she, of course, had come out of the seizure by then. And so when we got there, that was one of the first questions they asked is, has she hit her head on something? Well, her dad was carrying her to bed the night before, and he smacked her head on the door jamb. So I don't think that counted. I don't think that triggered her epilepsy. But yeah, so trauma can do that. A stroke can cause, because lack of oxygen can cause you to have a seizure. Fever. A lot of times if little kids have really high fevers, that they'll have a seizure. Now, watching Pokemon. So I want to show you, come on. Oh, nope, this is not the thing. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Okay, let's go out of this because I got something to show you here. Let's see. Okay, so this was not, oops, that's not what I want. Oh, let's just put Xbox box. Okay. So I don't know if you've seen this before. Here's the one that I want. Let's find it. Oh, come on. Oh, there it is. All right, here we go. So let me share, make sure that you can see this. All right, so back in the day, here's the thing, is that back in the 80s, maybe 90s, I guess it was in the 90s, there were these little Japanese kids who were watching Pokemon after school, and they started having seizures while they were in front of the television set. They're like, holy crap, what in the world is going on? Well, come to find out, a certain pattern of flashing lights can induce seizures. And so that's why strobe lights are used during EEGs to try to trigger a patient who has epilepsy. So here's what it says on, and it's not just photos, it's not just Xbox, like gaming systems, but I've also heard about it on movies lately. Apparently Incredibles 2, there was some other one, that the way that it's animated may make you feel weird. So here it is, this is what it says. A very small percentage of people may experience a seizure when exposed to certain visual images, including flashing lights or patterns that may appear in video games. Even people who have no history of seizures or epilepsy may have an undiagnosed condition that can cause these photosensitive epileptic seizures while playing video games. Immediately stop playing and consult a doctor if you experience any symptoms. So here what the symptoms are. Parents, ask your children, and then it says play in a well-lit room. Do not play if you are drowsy or fatigued. See, when you're sleep deprived, you are more likely to have a seizure if you are likely to have a seizure. So that's kind of interesting. So anyway, that's what that is all about. All right. I can't remember where I'm going. Okay. All right. So what do we do for it then? Oh, well, actually, so usually we've got two kinds of seizures. We have absence seizures or petit mal. When Amy was diagnosed with her first one, we had a friend that was a nurse, and he said, yeah, it's our 100-yard stare. And it was, the lights are on, but nobody's home. So those are some kinds of seizures. We just call them partial seizures now, or complex partial, depending on what you have. Then the grand mal are the convulsive seizures. And so those are the really bad ones, where people say, oh, put a spoon in their mouth so they don't bite their tongue off or something. That doesn't happen. Just hold their head so they don't thrash around and hurt themselves, and otherwise, clear all sharp objects around them, and then let the seizure go, happen. Now, here's the interesting thing, is that many people say they know when their seizure is happening because they smell something, or they feel a certain way, or they see something, and they know they're about to have a seizure. This is so true that we have seizure dogs that can sense when the seizure is about to happen, and they get their people onto the ground, and then they dial 911. So they've got the little help, I've fallen, I can't get up button. And so then they push the panic button, and then help comes. And so I think that's really awesome. So how do we treat it? Oh, I never showed you the hemispherectomy video. Did I? Nope. I'll have to post that. So what do we do? Treat with anticonvulsives. That's what worked with my daughter. So medications. We can do a vagus nerve stimulator. That's like the deep brain stimulator that we saw. Sever the corpus callosum, like we saw the guy that could write things with his two different hands. Or we can completely remove the right hemisphere. And so I'll put in a video. I remember now, I couldn't find it. So maybe we watch it. Anyway, so I just want to show you this, this little clip. How do we know now where the different areas are in the brain? So we'll watch this clip, and then I'll tell you about it, and then we'll pretty much be done.
morning.
Every time she has a seizure, she smells something burning. Now, if we can provoke that smell by probing the surface of the brain, we'll find the source of the seizures. Mrs. Cole, do you feel anything?
I see the most wonderful lights.
And now what do you feel?
Did you pour cold water on my hand, Dr. Penfield?
Now what?
Oh,
What is it, Mrs. Cole?
burnt toast. Dr. Penfield, I can smell burnt toast. Dr. Wilder Penfield. He cured my seizures and hundreds more. They say he drew the roadmap of the human brain. We just called him the greatest Canadian alive.
Now, sorry, because it's Canadian, but I just think that's really awesome. Okay, so so what he was doing was not just poking her just to find out what different things did, but he knew if he could find that area that triggered her burnt toast smell, that if he excised that area, that her seizures would probably stop, and sure enough, they did. And so Penfield mapping of the brain is what we have, you know, when we saw what controls what, that was a lot of his research. So so that was her aura. She smelled burnt toast, and before she would have a seizure. So, okay, very last thing that I want to take a look at is referred pain. So referred pain is the situation where we have things going on in our body. So we have organs within our body, gallbladder, appendix, and so on, that normally we're not really aware. You know, there's not a lot of painful things that are coming from that. But when it does, these areas are going to synapse with the dermatomes that are in our skin. So, so if I have a liver or stomach or pancreas kind of pain, I'll get pain here. Or, you know, if I'm having heart pain, it's going to go all down this area, because the dermatome that controls this part of my body, or that senses this part of my body, synapses in the spinal cord in the same place where heart pain signals come from. So your brain gets confused, and your brain's like, I think it's really coming from your chest and down your left arm, and not really from your heart, because your brain is so not used to getting pain signals from the heart. And so these are all referred pain. So my anatomy professor had pancreatic cancer when he was working on his PhD. So he was in his late 20s. And he tells the story of having pain right here in the center of his shoulder blades, right between his shoulder blades, just intense pain. And he had been to the doctor, and one doctor said, oh no, you've just been bending over the microscope too much while you've been doing your research. It's just, you know, back pain, whatever. But it was just too intense, and he just wasn't satisfied with that answer. So he went to another doctor, and as soon as he told the doctor, my pain's right here in my back between my shoulder blades, he's all, we got to get into you. I've got to see what your pancreas looks like. And he had pancreatic cancer, and so he had to have his pancreas removed. So that's, you know, diagnoses for referred pain are very, very common when it concerns, you know, things going on in your body. Just like your, not just like your appendix, like kidney stones too. Sometimes, well, here appendix, that can be upper pain as well, besides just the actual lower pain there. I know with my kidney stones, it doesn't always feel like it's in my kidney. Sometimes it feels like out here in the front, like more of a urinary, not urinary, more of a like menstrual cramps kind of a feeling. All right, so that does it for the autonomic nervous system. We didn't get to senses today, but that's okay. We'll take a look at senses tomorrow. Start them tomorrow and then finish them off this week. So, oh, stop sharing. All right, so that's what we need to take care of, is just get into our senses notes and get those wrapped up. Remember that tomorrow you got to get your lab practical finished if you haven't done it yet. And then other things that we need to do for the rest of the semester, then I'll let you know about those too. So have a great day. And tomorrow, so we'll see you at 1 o'clock tomorrow, just our regular lab time. So I guess that's all. Have a great day. Bye.